Hey everybody, how are you? Welcome to Druid Circle. I hope everybody's doing okay. I hope your Thanksgiving went well. Uh, I hope you're enjoying your weekend, what's left of it. Maybe some of you also have off tomorrow. Today I want to be talking about Miracle on Stonehenge Road. This is Serene Sunday. My name is Druid Nicholas Declan, founder of the Druid Circle, founder of Druid Order of Blessed Stone and Wood, and founder of Druid University, all coming within the next several years. I hope your experience on the community page and in our community has been good. You know exactly where we stand, and that's also important too. This way, we pull no punches, and I'd rather come out and tell you exactly where I'm at in my journey. This way, if it's not the same journey you share, then it's something that our paths might not cross. So invite. I have a really great talk for you tonight, and I hope you if you're watching this on a watch party. Again, please comment, but also know that your comments on the watch party on Facebook will get deleted, not just because of anything, just because I delete the watch parties, and then you can also catch it on YouTube if you can't catch the whole thing. The purpose of these like Serene Sundays is to get you ready for the week, and I know a lot of you don't work tomorrow, but for those of you that do go back to work tomorrow or whenever your Sunday is, this is the time to play them. And play them last thing that you do before you go to bed, because they're meant to be soothing, encouraging, and loving, and all goodness of everything. So let me just turn it this way. This way you can see the altar a little bit too. I do my not to get off the subject, but I do my Samhain ritual on December 1st. And a lot of you say December 1st. Why December 1st? Samhain's back, 4 weeks ago, right? 5 weeks ago. I do it December 1st because that is when my dad died. And so it's the most appropriate day, I figure, to celebrate Samhain. And my time when the veil that I see in my realm is the thinnest. Even though the veil continues to thin until the birth of the new sun, it is at its thinnest point at Samhain. And so I want to talk to you about tonight, and what we're going to be doing is talking about Miracle on 34th Street. Many of you guys saw that, and I really want to talk about why that is so important. So it's been a tradition, at least in my home, that we watch certain movies at certain times of the year. So for Thanksgiving, we watch Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. We watch Free Birds, and a number of other shows, right? That really create the idea of truly giving thanks and bringing people together, and creating that family, even if that family isn't necessarily a blood member, because family is truly what you make of it, right? And I don't virtue signal, so it's not up to me to tell you what your family is. That's up to you to determine, right? And so I think that this is a perfect example, because this is such an important show tonight, and I hope that I can communicate everything that I'm feeling. I am feeling just so much joy talking about this. And even though Thanksgiving is a difficult time for me, because it is right after the time that Dad passed, he was a deacon in the Roman Catholic Church, and served his parish well. I mean, he was a wonderful speaker, what was it, 3,000 people came to this person's funeral. So he had a very good impact on me and on his community and on those that he taught as well, and for his country as he served in the armed forces. So I want to start talking about Miracle on 34th Street and why that's important. And if you did not see the movie, I am telling you that if you feel called to being Druid, if you feel a call from the Druids directly themselves, then I would say that this is a show that you must watch. So, Miracle on 34th Street has many major characters and major players in the show. But I want to talk to you about 5 particularly. And one is Doris Walker. Doris is a non-believer, a person who I don't think that they bring it up actually in the black and white, but it is sort of, I think they allude to her being an atheist, and that's they don't actually say that, but I think that's what they're trying to get across in this movie. Susan Walker, the daughter, then by nature is nurtured into also being an atheist, but it is interesting in the way they present it, because they don't do what a lot of people do today, and that is indoctrinate their kids into believing what the parents do. I saw a kid once walking around with a shirt that said, fuck Trump. And so this boy at 6 years old is walking around saying that, and I'm sitting here saying, wow, that's indoctrination. So the interesting way they do it is they pull it off by having Doris talk to Susan, the child, and say, look, this is what I believe, but I want you to go ahead and believe what you want to believe. And if you believe in Santa Claus, then you believe in Santa Claus. Kris Kringle is Santa Claus. And by the end of the movie, it is logically proven that Kris Kringle is Santa Claus, by all means, backed up by an official governmental agency, right? And you have Fred Galley, and Fred Galley is a believer. Fred Galley is a person, he's like a little boy in a candy shop who believes everything from Santa Claus to probably the Tooth Fairy, and so interestingly enough, there is a difference between Kris Kringle and Fred Galley, because Fred is in this world, in this realm, whereas Kris Kringle is actually in our realm, but also has access to another realm, and that is the other world, right? And finally, Granville Sawyer. And Granville Sawyer is a very interesting fella. He is a psychiatrist. In the original, he is I believe he's a counselor, but they make him a psychiatrist in, I think, the second, in the remake. So Granville Sawyer is this doctor who then goes ahead and proceeds to question Kris Kringle on whether or not this man is delusional, who believes that he is Santa Claus. So I'm not going to be giving away the plot or giving any spoilers away, because that's not the purpose of this talk. The purpose of this talk is to get you to think a little bit more, especially if those of you are out there who are atheo druids, to talk to you directly about believing. And I think that we live, and I wrote this in a quote, that we live basically in a godless world today. We live in a world where if it's invisible or intangible, that it does not exist. And so as we move into a world more of science, and whatnot, we move into this world that says that if it is not tangible, if it is not visible, if it is not perceived by the average sense, then this means that it does not exist. And that is a fallacy. We know that because there's plenty of things that you can prove that deny that fact. And so the movie goes ahead and takes you on this tour of belief. And one of the things that begins the question is this. Begins the question, I know everything's in reverse, very sorry about that, mirror image, but this is fairy tales. And it's a pretty thick collection. I have a few of them. Barnes & Noble came out with them, and I like the new collection. I like the book. They're nice. You know, and then they put all of them together, basically. It goes ahead and it begins to attack stories of old and says, no, that these things don't exist, that witches don't exist, that druids don't exist, that wizards don't exist. Moreover, that the gods, the ancestors, and the mysticals do not exist. The God of your understanding does not exist. The pantheon of your understanding does not, in fact, exist. That it's all in your head. And the reason why I want to evaluate this and talk about this is because we need to begin to challenge that which is darkness. And since this is Samhain, there couldn't be a more appropriate time than talking about that which is dark. And what is darkness? Darkness is facing that which we believe to be true and find out it is not. That's darkness. When you become the light, that's darkness. And that darkness sees you as light and knows you all too well. It knows how you flicker. It knows how you balance. It knows what makes your flame grow, and it knows what makes your flame dwindle. It is darkness. That darkness is otherwise known as the occult, and it is up to me as a druid to teach you how to make the occult come to life. Be seen, be transparent. I remember talking to a witch at one point, and she said to me, there are things that you will not know or I will not tell you. Well, that's not fair. All information, I believe, is meant to share. And so as a result, I think that it's also important that we think carefully about folklore. Myth itself, as I talked about in another show, I begin to talk about how Mircea Eliade talks about myth versus reality, and also examines that myth is truth. We also talked about in another show, an episode, how that myth is an account of the stories you have been told to be true. Moreover, that myth is an account of your version of your story. Moreover, that myth is your own perception, and that your perception is your reality. And that your reality is true. And then I also talked about the idea of one of my favorite shows, Seinfeld. I mean, Seinfeld is the most absolutely politically incorrect show. So rude and obnoxious, and I love it because it is the truth. It's meant to joke and poke at what is true. We can go ahead and we could joke all we want about folklore. And in today's reading of the Witch of Rathdani, or a Queen's County Witch, when I talked about this at Grove today, and I gave a talk about it after we read it, it was interesting to note that the myth itself, while so ridiculously worded, so hyperbolized, that it was in fact almost believable that it wasn't real, still has those characters that are so real that make the story real. In Seinfeld, there's an episode that I think Jerry's having a party and they're going to go watch a boxing match, and he invites all these people over and he has chips and all this kind of stuff, and he lends the car out to George, who goes ahead and picks up Elaine or whatever the case is, to come to this party. And then as George is finding a parking spot, he passes the parking spot and then drives in, right? And then the other person, who is also another guest at the party, comes in and parks, right, from behind and pulls in. And so then the whole entire story is an account of what happened. Who is right? Who is wrong? Who's telling the truth? And who is telling a lie? It just so happens that between both gentlemen who have the cars, they're both telling the truth. Because not even the cops themselves can give a ticket, and the reason they can't give a ticket is because, in fact, they are both true. So I don't necessarily believe that myth is false. It just depends on the way you see things. One of the stories, and one of the themes, I should say, in Miracle on 34th Street is this idea that's brought up in the very beginning of the show, where Doris Walker and Susan Walker are talking about folklore and fairy tales and saying, no, fairies don't exist, elves don't exist, these things don't exist. Yet unexplainable things happen. And we don't know how. Does the door open by itself? Or is there a scientific reason for it opening? Does a book fly off the shelf? Or is there some sort of science behind that gravitational pull? Certainly an atheist would say no. There has to be a reason. There has to be a reason. And so until we reach the age of reason, we live in, I guess, if you will, the land of make-believe. And when we live in this world of make-believe, it is important to have imagination. If we fail to have imagination, if we fail to even go in to challenge our own things that we believe are not true and believe them to be true, we are exposing ourselves to the most vulnerable point that anyone could expose themselves to. And what is that point? Darkness. Samhain. And when we expose ourselves as light to the darkness only has one thing to do, and that is to respond to your light. It doesn't matter how your flame dances. It matters that your flame is alive. I'll tell you a little story. When I was in chemistry class, a teacher came in and brought in a candle and lit the flame, and we then began this process of proving that the flame was not alive, and that it breathed in oxygen, and that it was moving, and that it was eating, it was drinking. The point is that, and it even had reason. When you put your hand to it, pushed it, it showed a reaction. Is the flame alive? I would go ahead and say to you that yes, the flame is alive. And I would also go ahead and make a judgment now, as did so in the Miracle on 34th, that fairies are alive and well. And that just because we cannot see does not necessarily mean that they are not there as be. Our past creates our present. I talk to many people who do not believe in God. And many stories come back as, I knew there was no God when I found out that I was taught a lie. And then I ask further questions, and normally it all goes back to Santa Claus. In almost all movies during this time, most are about darkness. And the darkness is the absence of the light. And the light is the absence of the darkness. Yet the light itself is alive. The darkness is in fact death. So in a world of darkness and light, while both exist, one must not be real. Fear is not real. Fear is a reaction to an absence. So if our past creates our present, and our past is based on hurt, then our future will never, ever create happiness. We can never be happy if we aren't fulfilled. And I'm going to say it is okay to believe in things that don't exist. It is okay to believe in the very things that we believe do exist. Sinterklaas is real, as well as Odin. And if you really want to get it technical, I believe that the minute that it enters into our mind isn't necessarily the minute it's created, but it is the minute that we begin enlightenment. We begin enlightenment when we begin to share our stories, and we share those stories with others. And while others may share the same stories, while other ethnicities may share the same stories, they have their own twists. But we all show that we are a web of truth when we come together. The question is that if our present then creates our future, can we make belief? And if we begin to make belief, we then are able to build the stairway to heaven, to the heavens. And to build that bridge that when we see something so far away and we're on the opposite side of that very existence and we see a bridge, we build it. It isn't there yet, but just because it isn't there, it doesn't necessarily mean it can't exist. Sure, Druid in the class, you're talking about tangible things. And I say to you that in most philosophies, the proof that God does not exist is the proof that says, if God exists, he can strike me down dead. And then that will be proof. Proof for who? Proof for you? No. Because if he strikes down dead, and you're not able to believe it. We use logic, and twist logic, to make the other world fake. And so, Granville Sawyer then talks about this idea of delusion. Are we, in fact, delusional? The answer is every single person have their own delusion. But is that a bad thing? Isn't hope delusion? Isn't the expectation of our prayer to the God or gods of our understanding or the pantheon of our understanding, that the expectation of that outcome of that prayer, of that bidding, of that exchange, that the outcome happens based on our faith? Isn't that delusional? Well, if that is delusional, then the United States government is delusional because they print right on the bill, "In God we trust." We say it in the national, in the Pledge of Allegiance. And true, while it was added later, regardless, it's not a debate on anything political, but I'm just trying to say here that there are things that we have that even say that it exists. So at what point does one believe in delusions that delusion is no longer good? Well, there is another scene in Miracle on 34th Street, and it's between two doctors. It's between Granville Sawyer and Santa Claus's. Santa Claus apparently lives temporarily in this elderly home in New York, is staying there for the Thanksgiving Day parade in New York because he wants to see it. So the resident doctor there says and brings up this very important point. If a person has delusions and that person's delusions are beneficial and that person's delusions are good and intended and they're not hurtful and they're not causing any sort of suicidal ideation or homicidal ideation, then why not believe? What's wrong with it if an individual is functional? We all, almost all, believe in something beyond us. I think that it is absolutely natural to believe in something beyond us. I even think that it is not only just natural to believe in God or the gods. It is natural. It is not natural. It is unnatural to disbelieve. We have to force ourselves not to believe. Or, even worse yet, we then are hurt by an incident in our past that causes us to lose hope for the future. I think it's absolutely delusional not to believe in the pantheons of our understanding. I think it is delusional to be godless. We then have no faith. And if we have no faith, then our ability to test our reality is no longer a constant. In the movie, there is a Miracle on 34th Street. I think Fred Gelly talks to Susan Walker, the child, and says to Susan, look, faith, I'm almost sure, I'm not exactly 100%, it could be Doris, the mother, but either Doris or Fred then say to Susan and say, faith, and I have it right here, faith is the result in believing in things when common sense says not to. And again, faith is the result of believing in things when common sense says not to believe. If we stop believing, we stop generating. And if we stop generating, we stop leaving. We cannot leave or live, if you will, if we are not beings. We must be beings to live. Therefore, we must continue to be live, be life, believe. And in a Druidic sense, I think that value of worshiping the gods or the God of your understanding is such that says you are continually opening a channel between you and something you cannot touch. But what happens if you can touch it? I wrote that when the story begins to bring up the idea of miracles and magic and science and talks about miracles, I wrote that we can only see miracles going backwards in time as a result of unexplained science, which I call magic. Now, I don't care what you define magic as, but magic exists. just as much as miracles exist. And we can only see the miracle. I shouldn't say only, because there are things that actually happen that we cannot prove and understand why. And it is those very things that cause us to say, wait a minute, maybe there is something out there. But to be a complete atheist, I don't actually know if that's even possible. To not believe in the existence of another universe, another world, another realm. How can you not? There are so many. I took a picture and I have it, and I could show that last Yule I lit up this altar here, and I outlined it. I did not arrange this. And I'm taking a picture, and somebody said, I see an angel in that picture blowing a trumpet. And so I'm like, I didn't do it. I took a picture, and then I put it in black and white, and I polarized it a bit to make sure that the images on the wall would come out a little more clearly. Took my stylus and I start outlining, and as I start outlining it, what do I see? An angel blowing a trumpet with a harp. And it's all right there. And I'm like, whoa. No, I am telling you to believe. The Druids are asking you to believe. The trees express their belief by the way they look and reach outward and open to the heavens, downward and so below. One is not good, one is not bad. Both are at least beyond us. The best religion is the religion of the trees. Be like a tree. One of the final topics in Miracle on 34th Street is the topic of time traveling, and then it is addressed, in the newer release. The most recent one, I think it was done in the 90s, where how do you get around Santa? How do you do it? Do you have a special thing? Do you And the answer is to slowing down time. Now, why is this important? This is important on so many different levels. And mostly on the level of understanding that corporations push us forward into the next season, the next 2 seasons, when we should still be celebrating one. And I don't know about you, but I'm still celebrating Samhain. I still got pumpkins around, apples around. I have a potpourri right here of apples, dried apples, apple leaves. And my thing is to talk about this idea of slowing down time, because I believe that when we slow down time, that is when we are able to have more faith. That we are able to begin to create a better future of ourselves tomorrow than we are today. And what do? We do that by slowing down time, taking time out, and using our own time machines to slow it down. You don't need to, start decorating for Yule when we still got 4 weeks left of Samhain. or Alban Arthur, or Alban Arthwin. The light of Arthur, the light of the sun, the light of the sun. And I think that if we do begin to slow down our moments in time, we then are able to create and understand the value in the folklore, the value in the fairy tales, the value in the myth, the value in the mythos, the value in the true accounts. Before we talk about the magic that I want to teach you tonight, and before I teach you that, and the magic I teach you on these shows are very low, very, very basic. It's basic magic. I don't teach anything much more than that because, well, you're not being schooled in it, number one, and number two, I don't want you messing around with things you can't control. So I'll give you the magic, and I'll also give you your Ayatol, which is your Druidic mantra. The difference between a mantra and a Druidic mantra, or a mantra and an Ayatol, or the Folklore, is the difference between just saying, I am rich, I am rich, I am rich, I am rich, and actually including part of that ejaculation or ejaculatory prayer to be, a part of action. You see what I'm saying? You could say I'm rich all you want, but are you doing anything to make it happen? I want to summarize what we talked about today, and that was, we talked about myth versus reality in folklore, and how that principle was the forefront of Miracle on 34th Street, and how later it addresses that our past creates our present, but that if our present is without any sort of imagination, then there is no way that we can ever visit the land of make-believe. But that if our present creates our future, then how possible is it to make belief? And then they go into the idea of faith, and actually describing faith as follows, saying that faith is the result of believing in things when common sense says not to. And that it also goes in and talks about miracles, magic, and science, showing how all three can coexist. And I say that we can only see miracles when we go backward in time and look back in time and say, yo, look, this did happen. I don't know how I got out of that. There's no possible way I got out of that situation. It was a miracle. But yet, there had to be some science behind it, right? And all magic is what? Undiscovered science. Just as all the occult is undiscovered knowledge. My job as a Druid is to teach you and show you, especially when we open up the university to everyone, knowing very well, and I always say this, knowing very well that we are very conservative and traditional, and we will not back down on those principles. But to also say that we will teach a comprehensive way of a Druidic approach to Druidry. And finally, last but not least, is time traveling, and that we slow down time to see our own reality and myth intertwined. Uriata for tonight and your homework for tonight is this: to repeat the following phrase, and I'll say it a few times. I wrote it down, and it is this: just because I have little to no evidence doesn't mean I can't believe. Just because I have little to no evidence doesn't mean I can't believe. So you want to take the first part, and that is the part of evidence, okay, and include that, and then meld that with belief, okay? And that it is okay to not only believe in the things that you can create tangibility from, but it is also important to believe in things that there is nothing tangible. Just because it doesn't occur, just because you haven't witnessed it, doesn't necessarily mean it isn't true. We know that in pure logic. All oranges aren't orange. Have you seen all oranges? Have you seen every single orange that exists? No. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean that out there somewhere isn't a blue orange. What if it is blue? What if the only way we see it is orange? Just because I have little to no evidence doesn't mean I can't believe. Just because I have little to no evidence means I still can believe. And that's your idea. And finally, for Druid. Here we go, kids. Here we go. You're going to write a letter to Santa Claus. And in this letter, you are going to write everything that you want to see in your life happen. Nothing negative goes in this letter. You don't see a kid write to Santa Claus and say, Santa, I know I'm probably not going to get the red bike. No, you just say, I want a red bike. Right? You are going to write every freaking thing that you want in life, and you're going to write it down in a way that is very descriptive, very very certain, very precise. And that's what you're going to do. You're going to write this letter out. This is your homework. And what you're going to do with that is you're going to take that letter, you're going to find out the address, you're going to go to Master Google, find out the address of Santa Claus, and you are going to mail that letter to Santa Claus on what you want. Not only what you want, but when you want it. Now, here is the difference between delusion and myth. The difference is lying to yourself. Santa, I want $1 million to appear on my floor right now in front of me. Could that happen? I'm not saying it can't. But you know deep down inside that's a lie to yourself. Because that might not necessarily be what you really want. What do you really want? What do you really want? And in fact, what do you want to be real in your life? What do you want to believe? And at the bottom of this letter, you are going to say, I believe in you. And then you're going to sign your name, love, and put your name in there, and you're going to address it to Santa Claus. You will then mail the letter. You will make a copy of the letter. Before you mail it, you're going to seal it up. And next year, at this time, the same day you wrote it, you're going to read it to yourself. And then I want you to determine whether or not it is okay to just believe. Now for your blessing. This goes beyond time and space, matter, whatever time you're watching this, it exists. And here we go. This goes beyond time and space. May the gods bless you. May the goddesses keep you. May the mysticals shine their light upon you, and may your ancestors be beside you forever and ever. World without end. Girawin. Bechego bra. East. Le mo gui. And as the Druids would conclude, according to Patrick, Holy Patrick, who did not, I don't believe, in fact, sent any Druid away. If anything, wanted to work with them and learn from them and saw their wisdom. Wrote, they ended all of their ritual by chanting Tasei for, Tasei for, be it thus, be it thus. For those of you on the Facebook page, for those of you on YouTube, you don't need to watch any more past this. But for those of you on the Facebook page, I will be posting starting Tuesday again. I will not be posting tomorrow. I have a packed-filled day. I also had a family emergency happen this week. Jeremiah and I. So it's just going to be incredibly busy for both of us next few weeks and even probably into January of next year. So I want to say that I will get on as much as I possibly can because I love to share my stories with you. For all those out there, whatever time of day it is, make it great. Have a successful week. And know that it is okay to believe in something more than you.